Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I'm doing a FIBA World Cup preview of sorts. I've done videos, or a video at least in the past, talking about Team USA and all the players that are dropping out and my thoughts on that. If you missed that, then be sure to check it out. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, but I'm going to talk about some of the other teams that are in the tournament that Team USA should at least be scared of. Now, I said in that previous video that even with the roster that they're bringing, I still think that they should absolutely win the tournament and should be the favorites, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some other teams to talk about and should at least be interesting to watch against Team USA and potentially give them a scare in a couple of different games. So I'm going to sort these teams into a couple of different categories just based off how big of a threat they are, in my opinion, to win the tournament into three different sections. Another thing, really quickly before we get started, I'm going to mispronounce plenty of names throughout this video. Don't kill me for it. It's not the end of the world. I promise I'm not going to perfectly pronounce all of these names. That's just the way it is. So the first team that, in my opinion, is a true contender and can actually win this tournament, there's three teams in this section, and the first is Serbia. And I'm going to be looking at my laptop here a little bit just so that I know that I'm at least attempting to pronounce these names correctly. But the four most notable players on their team that I see are obviously Nikola Jokic, then Bogdan Bogdanovic, Nemanja Bjelica, and Boban Marjanovic. Now, they're obviously going to have Jokic, who's going to be probably an MVP candidate this upcoming season, one of the best young bigs in the entire league. Bogdanovic gives them a good wing. Then you've got Bjelica, who's a good shooter, and then Boban, who's a big body in the paint. And having four legitimate NBA players on their roster certainly helps them a lot. They've got other good international players on their roster, but I'm going to be focusing on those four simply because they are NBA guys, and that's what I talk about on this channel. I'm not hugely concerned with how they're going to be on the perimeter. I am concerned, however, with Jokic and to a lesser extent, obviously, Marjanovic, just because Team USA doesn't exactly have the best big man defenders in this group or on their team. That's something that they have struggled with in the past with big men in general, but also on this team specifically, having so many guys drop out, that could be an issue. I'm not 100% sure who's going to cover Jokic on a consistent basis, and these guys are going to know how to play well together better than honestly Team USA is, and that's going to be a consistent theme throughout this video, is just the camaraderie and the togetherness of these teams, because they play together on a more consistent basis internationally, whereas Team USA has a little bit more turnover from tournament to tournament. So Serbia definitely is a team that would make me nervous if I was Team USA going into this tournament as one of the potential favorites to end up winning it. Another team that is a common adversary for Team USA at the highest level of international play is Spain, and they've got Rudy Fernandez, Ricky Rubio, Marc Gasol, and then Willy and Juan Hernangomez. The only non-NBA player on that list currently is Fernandez, but he's been in the NBA before. He's had a really good international career. People were actually really excited about him when he initially came over to the NBA, and it just never really worked out for him for whatever reason. But they've got another really good big guy in Marc Gasol, similar to how I just talked about Serbia having Jokic. These teams that have really good big guys definitely make me nervous. Then you got Rubio, who's going to play on an international stage, not going to be a great shooter, but a good defender, someone that's going to play, make well, and just fits in really well in the international game. And then Willy and Juan Hernangomez, one of which is a shooter, the other of which is a big man. Just really good depth for Spain. And I think that's something that's really important for these international teams, is, which I'll get to later on, some of them just have one really good player or two pretty good players, but it's more so about depth and always having someone on the floor that can really compete with teams like Team USA or other really good international teams in this field. So it's not enough to just have one really good player. And I think that's one of the strengths of Spain, is the fact that they do have these four guys, just like Serbia, that you know are going to be good and you know are going to play well, in addition to obviously all the other international players that they do have on their roster. So that's another team to look out for, in my opinion, which you guys probably already knew beforehand, is Spain. Moving on now to the last team in the true contenders category for me, and it's one that Team USA actually just finished up playing in a series, and that is Australia. They've got Patty Mills, Matthew Dellavedova, Joe Ingles, Andrew Bogut, and Aaron Baines, and that's a really good five-man group, and it would have been even better if Ben Simmons had decided to play with the Australian national team in this tournament. And honestly, if he had decided to play, I might have considered Australia to be the favorite, simply because they've given Team USA issues in the past. They're kind of an up-and-coming team in the international scene with the rise of Ben Simmons and guys like Andrew Bogut, Patty Mills, and Matthew Dellavedova playing over and over and over again in these tournaments. Joe Ingles is going to be really good for them. So they're going to be able to shoot, they're going to be able to defend, they're going to be able to rebound. It just would have been nice for them to have Simmons there as another really good playmaker and a high-level NBA player. And that's the one thing that they're kind of missing on this group, is they don't have someone like Jokic that Serbia does that can really, quote-unquote, take over a game or just could be the best player on the floor, potentially. Regardless of what Team USA lineup is on the floor, there's probably not going to be a situation in which Australia has the best player on the floor unless it's maybe Ingles, but this 5-man group is going to play well together. They obviously have other players on their roster, but again, I'm focusing on the NBA guys, and I think this is going to be a really interesting team to watch simply because they're tough-minded. They can really play defense, and they just beat Team USA. It obviously was in a scrimmage, but that gives them confidence. I would definitely look out for Australia, honestly, maybe more than any of the other teams that I'm going to talk about in this video, simply because they do have that confidence going into the tournament of having just beat Team USA. Moving on now to the next section, and these are two teams that might not be contenders to win the tournament, in my opinion, but should at least challenge Team USA at times in their matchups against each other if they do end up playing. And the first team is one that maybe you expected to see in the first group, but wasn't there, and that is Greece. Obviously, they have Giannis. They also have one of his brothers, and then they have Nikola as well, who had a cup of coffee in the NBA, was there for just a little bit. But I'm just not a believer in the whole Giannis is going to be able to carry Greece to the finals of this tournament or to win the tournament or to beat Team USA. He's obviously insanely good coming off of an MVP season, but I don't think just him alone is going to be enough. Now, that's no disrespect to any of the other players on the Greek roster, and they obviously have some good players to be on that international team, but I'm just not willing to put them in the true contenders category simply because of Giannis and only Giannis. Like, Calathes will be able to be a good playmaker. Giannis's brother will be a good athlete. We'll kind of see him on a bigger stage, which will be nice to see. But I mean, again, I don't want to reiterate my point too much. It's just, I don't think that just Giannis is enough, despite how incredible he is. They're going to have struggles spacing the floor around him. It's going to be tough for them to be a true contender. But I do think that they're going to cause some issues for certain teams, and potentially Team USA in this tournament. And then the other team in this group is one that probably is closer to being in that top contender group than Greece is, and that is France. They've got Rudy Gobert, Frank Ntilikina, Nick Batum, and Evan Fournier, and it's really about those other three guys. Like, Frank's going to be a good defender, but it's really about Batum, Fournier, and Gobert. Gobert's obviously an outstanding defender at the rim, an okay scorer in the paint, should obviously have a bigger role in this international team than he typically would. Batum is a good shooter, and in international play, again, should have more of a role than he's had the past couple of years in the NBA, but you don't really know what you're going to get from him other than shooting. And then Fournier is actually a really interesting player in this tournament because he can play both guard positions, he can play make, he can score, he can shoot. I would be a little bit afraid of France. Now, I'm not putting them in that top contender category with the three teams that I talked about earlier, being Serbia, Australia, and Spain, but I do think that they're a dangerous team. I'm just not sure that they're going to be able to score enough. Like, I think defensively they're going to be really good with Rudy Gobert, but I just believe in the depth and the scoring of those other three teams that I mentioned in that top category a little bit more than France. But if I'm ranking them, I would probably put them at 4 and then Greece at 5, even though they do have Giannis. And now we get to the last section, and I don't want to be disrespectful here. These are still two really good international teams. I just don't see them as a legit threat to win the tournament, or really as a second-tier team to potentially win the tournament. And the first one is Italy. They've got Danilo Gallinari, they've got Marco Bellinelli, and that's about it in terms of NBA guys. Those two players are going to be really good. They're going to be able to shoot. I'm really interested to see Gallinari in like a number one scoring option type of situation. It's been a while since that's been the case for him, and he's been hurt. Had a good season with the Clippers last year. Really interested to see him play, but that's about where it stops for me for Italy. If they had like one or two more players that are actually good NBA players and could really compete at a high level, I would really start to consider them a threat, because I do like the games of Gallinari and to a lesser extent Bellinelli. Obviously, is a really good shooter, but I just don't see the depth and I don't see the talent for this team to truly scare any of the other 5 teams in front of them that I've talked about so far in this video. And then last up is Germany. Most notably, they have Dennis Schroeder, and they also have Paul Zipser and Daniel Theis. Schroeder, obviously the biggest name here, someone that's going to probably shoot a ton for this team, try and score the ball a ton. I like his game in international play, should be able to get in the paint. I'm not seeing anything else really on this roster that excites me. I do think they're worth noting because they do have Schroeder, and I think they're going to be good. I just don't see them again as true contenders or second-tier contenders in this tournament. I do think that Team USA should be a little bit afraid of both Italy and Germany, simply because they do have Gallinari and they do have Schroeder, and at certain point in Team USA's roster, those players are better than guys that they have on their team. But as a collective team, I'm not especially worried about these two, but I do want to mention them simply because they are still very good. Zipser, I'm not really sure what Germany's going to get out of him. He had a cup of coffee in the NBA with the Bulls there for a moment. Theis will provide them good minutes in the paint so long as he can stay healthy, because he's had issues with that in Boston. And then, like I said, it's going to be the Dennis Schroeder show after that. And yeah, there you have it. That is the end of today's video. It's obviously different. I'm not specifically covering the NBA. I'm covering NBA players in an international stage, which I've never really done before. But one, the NBA offseason is a little bit dry at the moment, but I'm also really interested in this World Cup and this international event specifically because partially the Team USA roster is certainly weaker than it has been in the past. And I'm interested to see how these international teams stack up because certainly they've been creeping further or closer and closer, to Team USA in terms of talent and international play. And with a weaker roster, I think it's at the very least going to be a more competitive tournament and a more interesting one. I still think that Team USA is going to come out on top, as I said in that previous video, as well as at the beginning of this one. But I still think these are some really interesting teams to keep an eye on. But like I said, that is going to be the end of today's video. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.